Hello, my name is Mr. Ben. I am coming at you today with a video for my CM320 class at the University of Hawaii, UHWO. As you can see, I am doing a new video format. This is actually the second time I'm recording because the first time I didn't realize I didn't have any audio. So after 30 minutes of recording, when I went to play back, I had no audio, which means that the video was absolutely useless and I wasted a half an hour of my time. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. I have my notes here that I will be looking at occasionally in order to keep on this video on track. And so let's go ahead and get into that. So the first part about this video is that I will be talking about 10 different photos that caught my attention in some way and what trigger caused me to choose those objects. So first, I am going to talk about the first three images here, which happen to be street photos that I took with my Nikon and were prior to the assignment, but because I have limited transportation at the moment, I went ahead and decided to use these three as well as 7 that I had taken with the intent of fulfilling the assignment. So let's go ahead and get into the description of why I chose these verses, and then we'll get into the rest of the assignment later. So the reason that I chose this image is I felt that it shows a sense of community, because here we have this Chinese man in a open air market in Chinatown purchasing produce. So the reason I feel this shows a sense of community is because there's a large number of grocery stores on Oahu, and yet he chose to shop in the open air market in Chinatown, which would be a more personal view, or you'd become more personally attached to the people who are selling the produce. Or he could actually even possibly be the person who's selling the produce, as I never asked, because being that it's street photography, you don't tend to interact more than you absolutely need to with the subjects of your photograph. The second image here I chose is interesting to me because it shows this couple here who are working. They are pushing this cart with the boxes through the crosswalk. And while it is normally considered common sense that if you see people walking with a cart in the crosswalk that you would stop, yet this man feels the need that he still has to command whoever it is that is driving this vehicle to stop. I find that very interesting, is that he gives the illusion of being in command of every aspect of the current situation that he finds himself in. With this image, I chose this for 3 reasons. One, it is following the rule of thirds, which is the rule of odds, which is a photography type of thing in composing, where using an odd number of objects in your photograph will tend to make the photograph stronger. Now, I also chose this image because I feel it is very representatory of 3 things about Hawaii. You have the human element, then you have a location. So those who are familiar with Chinatown on Oahu would know Merchant Street. And then you have the street art here. So I feel it kind of, again, ties a bit of a human element with an artistic touch. And again, following the rule of odds makes for a very strong image. Moving on now to the images that I actually shot specifically for the purpose of this assignment. I chose this statue, which is in Chinatown, because it is actually obscured from view from the street. You have to walk up a few steps in order to see this clearly. And I find that interesting because it is a piece of art, yet it is actually kind of like a hidden art. So it forces you to interact with it in order to see the art piece itself. Moving on, we have this statue here again, a piece of art with a historic precedence, and we have the plaque here, which explains the purpose behind this statue. And to be honest with you, I didn't take the time to read it. I do know that it has a representation of historic relevance, and at some point in the future, I should probably read that because I'm interested in the history of Hawaii, but I will not do that at this point in time. The thing that drew me to this is that it is keeping the artistic touch with trying to connect those who are in the area with the history of the area itself. This image, I again, obscurity is the key here. This clock face cannot be seen by the general public unless you are essentially in the area in which I took the image, because here off to the left side of the image you will actually find another building that is equally as tall, if not slightly taller, than this building. So it makes me question, is this placed here to be an artistic piece? Is it uh, placed there and then the building next to it was built up afterwards? It really causes you to stop and question why you would have a probably 14-foot clock face facing another building where it's essentially obscured from view. So I find that very interesting, which is why I photographed it. This image may actually be one of my favorites, and the reason I took it is because what you have here is what would be considered by many to be street art that is being covered by stop graffiti posters. And the interesting thing about the stop graffiti poster is that it is actually uglier than the street art that it is covering, and it gives samples of different types of graffiti. So it's almost as if by posting these stop graffiti posters, they are actually posting more graffiti. So it makes me question, is this really a stop graffiti poster, or is it somebody who's using the stop graffiti poster to produce more graffiti? And again, I think it is kind of interesting that you have the street art being covered essentially by graffiti in the form of almost trolling by having graffiti on your stop graffiti poster. So that is really intriguing to me, and it's only almost oxymoronic. I'd like to see or meet the person that has created this stop graffiti movement here and see if they are in fact really trying to stop graffiti and they're just very ignorant about going about doing it, or if they are honestly trolling and just spreading more graffiti under the guise of stopping graffiti. Because again, this is ugly and serves no purpose. And while this may be questionable as to whether or not you find it to be visually appealing, it is still technically a form of art, whereas this is really just graffiti being plastered over the art. This image, for me, what triggers this image is the fact that the Hawaii Maritime Center, in the 13 and a half years I've lived in Hawaii, has never been opened once. My understanding is that the structure is not safe, so it is closed to the general public, yet there's no money being generated to repair it. So again, it's this sense of obscurity. It's the questioning, well, what's inside, and what is the purpose for the building still being here, especially when a lot of buildings in Hawaii are being torn down and then redeveloped for other purposes. So it's, again, very interesting that a building would be standing for at least 13 and a half years without actually generating any revenue, and in a return not being able to afford to be afford for upkeep to be performed on the building. My understanding is that it is currently under the control of the Bishop Museum, but that may be old information, as the last time I inquired about it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. But again, obscurity is the trigger, I think, for me. It's the question of what and why that makes this an interesting place for me. Here we have a hard man-made object, again an artistic piece. This is in front of the Bank of Hawaii, and this is either representatory of soft corals or seaweed, and I find it very interesting to be using uh, man-made objects. So the hardened metals, I believe this is probably brass or copper, most likely copper, now that I'm looking at the tone, being used to represent a natural object and one that would be soft. So the oxymoronic representation here again is what triggered me to find this to be an interesting subject to be photographed and talked about. This object is the last object of the 10, and what I find intriguing about this object, it is a horse made out of tree parts. So this is sticks or branches, and this is palm fronds. So again, we have this very natural object, and in this case even made from natural resources, excuse me, being used in juxtaposition with the man-made building here. And again, it being an art piece also attracts me because I am an artist. So let's move on and let's look at objective number 2 here, which is what is the takeaway from the article on sensory marketing. Analyze the photos that I took in terms of sensory marketing and what senses were involved in your choices. So let's go ahead and do that. So here, I think the sensory that was brought here, aside from the visual sensory, is the fruit. So the fruits are very aromatic, so they cause you to think about eating, and could even cause salivation that might not necessarily be as prevalent in a still image, but depending on how hungry you are, seeing the stack of bananas here may actually cause you to salivate because it could trigger your brain to remember, especially if you enjoy eating bananas, the taste of a banana, and could cause you to want to eat bananas and or other fruits and vegetables. I believe those are apples there, so you have kind of a variety of things. This sensory wise, this image here shows busyness. So you have a lot of traffic in a downtown urban area, which would kind of bring to mind the noisiness that comes along with being in that environment. And I almost kind of see this, right? This could be interpreted as the man saying, stop the sound, stop the movement, stop the noise, and trying to push this along, like, let me work in peace. So, I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, maybe, but you could interpret it that way. This, I hard to say really. I think in terms of sensory, for me, it really plays into the visual with this one. I mean, again, you could kind of go with the urban sound thing, but you know, it is what it is. I think this really is more of a visual sensory for me as an artist and a photographer. Again, following the rule of odds and featuring the street art as well as this woman here and the sign. So you have the human element, the location element for me, which sparks memories, and the artistic memory or the artistic uh, aspect, which for me personally, being an artist, again, triggers fondness and a interest in what is being done there. This again, the sensory for me is the obscurity, the being forced to walk up to it in order to see it. I mean, I don't know that I could necessarily say that fits into one of the five senses. Maybe almost like a sixth sense, if you believe in that sort of thing. There is kind of scientific uh, backing that says the sixth sense is real. So maybe the fact that it is obscured from view normally does kind of cause your sixth sense, once you see a small sliver of it, to say, oh, I really wonder what this is. I would like to uh, get over here and be more involved with what is going on with this object. Again, this, I think this sensory here plays with memory and wanting to know the history, especially for uh, local people who are interested, or even tourists who are interested in the history of Hawaii and learning more about how Hawaii is not just a vacation spot for people around the world, but it actually has a story of its own, and how that plays into current politics on the local level, as well as human rights and things of that accord. This again, the obscurity, because to me it draws the question: why would you do this? Why would you put a large clock face in a place where nobody can see it unless you're up close to the building, and then your viewing angle is so obscure that you really couldn't tell what time it was anyway? So, sensory wise, again, probably going with the sixth sense on a stretch there. It makes you just, it really just sparks the imagination. I wouldn't say that that really causes any sort of hearing or smell or anything like that. It's really just a why. So I think it's triggering the sense of self and your wandering mind or your questioning mind. Um, this here sense wise, I mean, I don't know. I think the reason I chose some of these images wasn't necessarily based on any sort of sensory input. That might even really apply for the clock and the statue. I really chose a lot of these images based on the visual and my inquiring mind as an artist, because I almost honestly see everything that I've photographed as being an artistic piece in one way or another, aside from the Maritime Museum here. And that's really honestly, again, just curiosity as to why it is what it is, and not necessarily any sort of audio or sense of smell. So we have that. Let's check in again. Describe the role that triggers may play in your channel. Well, based on the fact that my channel really serves two purposes. One, to kind of talk about different artwork or box openings for different camera equipment that I get or things of that nature. I really think that the visual sensoriness of my channel would really play uh, the biggest part, especially when I start getting into doing things like this where I'm showing my photographs and explaining what my thoughts were about the photograph when I took it, or things of that nature, as well as I could possibly also use through the use of different musical compositions or sound effects, depending on how my channel uh, grows. Because right now, even though I've had the channel for a long time, it really is still in its infancy. I have one successful video and 119 subscribers, all of which I am very thankful for, because it shows that even though I am not where I want to be yet with this channel, there are still people that view my channel as being something worth being watched. Let me see here again. Sorry to have to keep going back to my notes, but I want to stay on track with the intent of this video again, as it is an assignment for my class. Let's see here in detail again. The visual triggers are really, I think, the biggest thing. Maybe audio. If I can find audio that I feel goes with the theme of the video. I do have a cycling video that I produced some time ago that uses a bunch of different audio, which I actually kind of enjoyed, and I will be putting a link to that somewhere in the video when I do that. And as far as what strategies I might use, again, I think tying uh, good audio and having a friendly demeanor will really play well into keeping video retention. As I think in terms of senses, again, I'm going to keep falling back to the sixth sense. It might not be what one typically thinks about as senses. But I think a person who genuinely tries to be a nice person, people can feel that and see that in a person. So I think trying to be genuinely nice in my videos will really play key in keeping viewer rates up and possibly gaining more subscribers, which is, I guess, really my intent. I would like to really start showcasing my photographs and maybe even doing videos of me while I'm out shooting photographs. You never know, it could be quite an interesting thing. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see more videos of that nature where I'm going out and shooting the photographs and I'm bringing you along with me. In terms of this video, though, I believe that I have covered the 3 points that needed to be made. Again, I made this video for my CM, or Creative Media, if you will, 320 class, University of Hawaii, West Oahu. This is Mr. Ben. Actually, before I say goodbye, if you like the video or if you just want to support, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And due to YouTube's new algorithms and the way that they're showing content, click that bell right next to it. That way, when I do produce another video, you are more likely to be told that that is what is going on. So thank you very much for your viewing, and this is Mr. Ben signing out.